Hi friends, I thought I would take an opportunity to share with you how I feed my sourdough. I feel like I've gotten a lot of good success in feeding it in any way that I do, as opposed to what it took for me to get it started. I think I was on my third try trying to get this thing going. The first try I had it in a place that was too hot. Second time, I just couldn't get it to rise. The third time, I was about to toss it and I split it and gave it to my mom, and she gave it some bread flour and it exploded. So I kept it. It's since been passed on to many of her friends. They are all very happy with it, very excited that they're getting to use sourdough. And so I'm going to show you what I do. So I have bread flour. It's King Arthur bread flour, scale that goes down to grams. I have my active starter. I have 2 empty jars because we're gonna do a comparison kind of experiment. This will be good for me to kind of see how this works as well. I've got a kettle of water, some spoons for mixing, and a spatula. So I'm gonna turn on my scale. I've got my starter here. You can see it looks quite nice. It smells really good. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do 1 jar with just putting things in, 1 jar measured out exactly. And then I'm going to show you what happens when it seems like you don't have any more in the jar and there's nothing left and you're just going to wash it. Or if you're like, you accidentally use the whole container for a bread or anything that you're using it for, and what's going to happen. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put some, well, let me weigh this jar first to see how much I actually have. So 186. 234, so that's about 50 grams, so I'll be safe to do this. Okay, so I'm going to put the jar on. I'm going to tar it to bring it down to 0. And so this one I'm going to do 10 grams of starter and then equal parts flour and water. So it's a 1 for 1 for 1 ratio. And so what this is going to do, hold on, let's see, is this will create, and if you do the starter this way, okay, we'll go with 15 grams because that's what I just plopped in there. I'm gonna put 15 grams of water, and I do the water first sometimes if I remember to, because I like to stir up the starter with the water to just more easily incorporate it into the flour once the flour comes in. Otherwise it gets a little trickier. So I'm just going to try and mix this up as best I can so that it's mixed into the water. And I'm going to show you what, I don't know if you can really see what this looks like, but you can see it's a pourable consistency. And so I'm going to tar out the jar again. And I have my flour. These containers are from IKEA. They're really great. And then I also got this from IKEA. It's a little scoop. I just keep it in there. So I'm going to put 15 grams of, I'm using King Arthur, and I'm also using bread flour. I know other people have success with other types of flours, and sometimes if I run out of bread flour, I will also just use white for a short period of time. But I think bread flour probably is just what I've had success with. I know some people use rye and other things. So I'm going to stir this up. I'm going to try and get all of the dry parts of the flour incorporated into the mixture. And just make sure it's all in there. I'm going to scrape down the sides. Alright, then I'm going to scrape out the spoon. My hands have been washed so they are clean. And then you can kind of see what it looks like there. Right, and so I am going to close this You can leave it open. You don't have to close it all the way. You can plastic wrap or a coffee filter. I know in the beginning it's really important to get air into there because you want the natural yeast and bacteria in the air to inoculate your starter as you're developing it. But now that mine already has that in there, I don't need to worry about that. So what I'm doing for our experiment is I'm putting a rubber band around this jar so that we can see, and I'm gonna mark this, but this is our explicitly measured container. So yellow. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna place the jar. Actually, I'm not gonna use the scale. I am just going to put the rest of the starter in this jar. It's hard to see it because it's clear and my countertops are gray, but I am gonna scrape the rest of this in here. Let's see. Okay. And this is really how I do it. Once I figured out kind of like consistency of the starter, I don't measure it out anymore. I've gotten lazy and I just don't like really care to because my results are always rises and I don't ever have any problems with it. And I'm not an exact person when it comes to these things, so I just kind of dump everything in. And then I stir. And then what I'll do is if it looks too watery, I might add a little bit more flour. If it looks too dry, I'll add a little bit more water, but adding the extra water after it's been mixed, it's kind of tricky. Just because of the consistency is really weird, and so I try to avoid. I always go with more water in the beginning if I'm not sure. It's always easier to put more flour. So I'm scraping everything off. All right, majority of it's mixed in. As you can tell, this looks a little thicker than the other one. A bright orange lid for this one, and this one's going to be our non-measured. Can't find my kitchen towels, but I will compost this paper towel, and then I'll feel better about you wiping my hands with a paper towel. And so got 2 more rubber bands. So I'm gonna place this rubber band at the top of where my starter lies so we can accurately measure the rise. So we've got these 2 here. And now this jar. This jar looks like it's been scraped clean. You can see some remnants inside, but there's not much. So this actually happened to me a few times. I don't really properly gauge like how much I'm gonna need for a bread recipe. So I've come to an empty jar and freaked out, and I was like, well, there's a little bit left in here, so I'll just try it and see what happens. So I'm gonna put a little bit of water, just enough to, get a color, just enough to kind of like scrape everything down inside the jar. It's gonna get the water kind of murky. And then I'm gonna add some flour. It's about equal, I would say, to the amount of water that I put in there. And no, it's super dry, so this is where I'm gonna try and catch the stir before it gets weird. Now I found that if your starter is too watery, it doesn't rise as well, but you can always make up for it the next day. So like I'm never worried about harming my starter. Especially in the beginning, I was freaking out, because once I actually got it going, I was concerned, but it's super easy to take care of. I've left it in the fridge for a long period of time. I bring it out, I let it sit out at room temperature until the next day, and then I feed it the next day. Sometimes I'll go without feeding it for a day or two. You know, you do want to be careful when you're not feeding it because it builds up lactic acid, which affects the flavor. It makes it really a lot more sour, so, but not like a flavorful type of sour. I keep the discard in the fridge. I use it for, my kids really love Norwegian pancakes, which are like just a tastier crepe. And I will replace half a cup or a quarter of a cup of flour and a quarter of a cup of milk for a cup, half a cup of discard or starter, whatever, if you have it out. And they just taste really great. So we have our 3 jars right here. So I forgot to show you the consistency of this one, but that's what that looks like, just the scrapings. So we have yellow is the measured version, orange is the lazy version, and blue is the one that saves the day. So I'm gonna come back right now. It is 4:41. So I'm gonna come back in 2 hours and I'm gonna show you what it looks like then. And then I'll show you right before I go to bed, because that's when the magic's gonna happen. And then I'll show you again in the morning what it looks like. So I'll see you later. All right, so this is what we have. It's 6:20 in the morning, and so this is the one that we measured. This is the one that we just kind of went the lazy approach, and this is the starter that had just scraps in it. So it took a lot longer to rise, you could see from the pictures, and it didn't rise as far. But if you've run out and that's all you've got left, you can start there, and by the next feeding it's going to be just as active as any of these other ones. But you can see that the one that was not measured kind of rose the most. So you just figure out what works for you and do that. All right, until next time. Thanks, friends.